Greetings, free thinkers, and welcome to the Hodcast. And today I'll be providing you with proof that Extinction Rebellion have to pay people in order for them to attend their rallies and demonstrations in which they disrupt the lives and the day-to-day business of people who live in the various capital cities of various Western countries. We will also demonstrate just how absurd these people are and their hypocritical attempt to hide diesel generators. That's what we'll be discussing today on the Hodcast. We'll jump straight into it, but first, very quickly, if you could, by all means, hit me with this channel with a subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you could like the video and leave a comment, that also helps me out a lot. Okay, let's just jump straight into it. Okay, so right off the bat, we jump straight in with a still taken from the website from Extinction Rebellion itself, and I will provide links in the description for the Extinction Rebellion website, which you can read through in your own leisure time. Here we can see how financial support is offered to volunteers in a variety of different ways, which usually covers about £400 per week maximum. This money comes from donations either by gullible people just donating in their own time with their own cash, or it comes from the majority comes from their powerful backers who have a vested interest in disrupting society, we'll put it that way. Not only that, these people, what do they need as for living expenses? The majority of these people live in squats or communes. These are the people that want to live in a socialist society, yet they operate entirely out of capitalism. They are funded via capitalism. They rely on the the payroll system, which is a classic PAYE system of payments to people and to employees. They are operating on a corporate basis here. Now, here is something very interesting that I've found. Now, upon doing my research for Extinction Rebellion and the types of things they do and where they get their funding from, etc., etc., one thing that I have discovered, and I'd like you to research this yourself if you do not want to take my word for it, which is entirely your own prerogative, or if for the interests of this being a video that's watchable length, I can't fit everything in. So by all means, if you want to have a fully comprehensive look, then I recommend this to you. Now, I typed in to Google Extinction Rebellion financial support for volunteers £400. Now, that was for me to get the information that I've just shown you there. Now, another thing that another search result that had came up, if we go down, we find an ODF file, Extinction Rebellion payroll of paid activists. Now, I downloaded this and opened it up, and we can see that a lot of the people who are paid activists are getting a whole lot more than £400 a week. And these are normally people who are the upper echelons of Extinction Rebellion and other likewise groups. They are the leaders, the organisers, and they are getting quite a lot of wonga. Now, opening that ODF file, we come up with a list of the project management and the organisers of Extinction Rebellion and the type of money that they are receiving, largely from their donors, specifically in question their big-time, big-shot donors, the businessmen, the capitalists they claim to hate, the capitalist system that they claim to dislike so much, yet they are more than happy, more than willing to accept some serious funding from these people. Now, I know that even if you are a socialist, we live in a capitalist society, we live in a capitalist system, that you're going to need funding. We live in a system where you need funding to do anything. I understand that. However, there are countries and societies around the world that live in socialism right now, such as Venezuela, for example, the country with the highest oil reserves in the world. A lot of people think that the countries with the biggest oil reserves in the Middle East, don't get me wrong, they have a lot of oil. But the specific country with the largest amount of oil and natural gas reserves in the world is Venezuela, a country that used to be first world. It had a first world standard of living. It now has a third world standard of living. Why? Because the young voters coming of age, they thought they would flirt with socialism. So Extinction Rebellion, by all means, why don't you go there? This is a country that they're not doing anything with their oil. Nothing at all. They're socialist. They don't like it. Okay, so let's get into this ODF file here. We can see right off the bat, for example, Gail Bradbook. We can see here Gail Bradbook, if you follow the cursor. She's project management and spokesperson. She's a coordinator and financial oversight for the group in question, Extinction Rebellion. She states how she does not have a capacity for 40 plus hours a week without burnout, and you'll get quality and quantity with Gail Bradbook at the handsome price of £3,600. Moving on, we have Stu, who is an organiser of people, facilitator. He's a spokesperson, I should imagine that says, but it just says spokes here, as you can see if you follow the cursor. Trainer of trainers. So I should imagine that he's somebody who will teach the people who go on to teach people who behave in a certain way. A political commissar, you could probably call him. He's a tech infrastructure visioning. He's a wordsmith. I believe he was going for wordsmith there. It says wordsmithing. And he has an MA in philosophy. Of course he does. Nothing of value to society at all. He's not an engineer. He's not a doctor. He's not a rocket scientist. He's a wordsmith. And he is paid the handsome salary of £4,800 to turn up in places like London and ruin the days of working class people who are going about their business earning the minimum wage. Liam Gary Bouch, who by his own words up until now has been a core organiser, he can be retained by Extinction Rebellion for a much more modest £200 a week. Following on, we have Ronan McNern, who's an activist, of course, public relations. Love making things happen, he says. Want to create a more equitable world for all. Yeah, we've heard that one before. I have many years' experience working for leading UK public relations agencies and clients across sectors, including social change and public sector, music, TV. He's an indie, he's an alternative indie type guy. The usual socialist. You've seen these advertisements on television that are very social justice directed in that direction, and I myself and a lot of other people have wondered about the quality of television advertisements and even the writing of certain programs and sitcoms. You name it, it all has a very left-wing, socialist-leaning agenda, and it is because people like this go into those types of roles. And for XR, he is asking for, if you follow the cursor down here, for XR I'm asking £350 per week. Accommodation costs will affect this. These people are paid agitators. Of course, I could go on and on. This document is 19 pages long, and it is 19 pages full of individuals who are being paid sometimes a lot of money, sometimes not too much money, in order to professionally protest day in, day out, and disrupt the lives from here to Berlin to the United States to Australia. Okay? These people are paid protesters. They are paid agitators. They are paid to disrupt daily life in the cities. Now, I'm sure you'll remember one of the other people we mentioned who states how he wants to create a more equitable life for all. However, just by the examples I have shown you, these people are paid widely different amounts of money for doing roughly the same thing. These people are hypocrites. How about you start with yourself? I've demonstrated to you here, and you can look for yourself. I've gave you the directions for you to find this document. It's not hard. A simple Google search, option 5, search result 5, and you can download the document for yourself, and you'll see for yourself. It's 19 pages long. I can't go through it all for you on here. By all means, look for yourself. Some of these people are being paid £200 a week to do the same thing that some of them are being paid £4,800 for. Those of you who are being paid £4,800 to professionally protest, to sit around dancing in town square with your friends, drinking Starbucks coffee from capitalist countries, trying to hide your diesel generator, trying to hide the fact you eat in McDonald's, these capitalist places you claim to hate so much. Why don't you give some of your money to your fellow comrades, your fellow socialist, social justice minded friends? But you won't do that. Your intention is to keep as much of that money for yourself as possible. Next, we have a debate in which one of the leading members of Extinction Rebellion has a discussion on the Daily Politics show in the United Kingdom with Andrew Neil, in which she admits that using alarmist language is good because it helps get the message across. I'm sure even one Adolf Hitler said something similar along the lines of, if you are gonna lie, you better make it a big one. Now, you could probably say that's ambiguous and it doesn't mean exactly what she meant. Of course, it probably doesn't. However, it is along the same wavelengths. If you're going to use alarmist language, you're going to use it in the hopes of convincing as many people as possible to go along with your agenda, which is exactly... It's the same wavelength as making a lie a big one. If you're going to lie, you want to make it bigger, because Adolf Hitler said, and I'm afraid to say it has been readily proved, that the people will readily believe a big lie than a small one.
I've seen some of your activists claim on TV that billions of people are going to die in quite short order. One of your founders, Roger Hallam, said in April, our children are going to die in the next 10 to 20 years. What's the scientific basis for these claims?
So these claims have been disputed, admittedly. There are some scientists who are agreeing, and there are some who are saying that they're simply not true. But, the overall issue is that these deaths are going to happen. We don't know exact numbers, and actually it's a little bit, concerning to focus on how many deaths. There will be deaths and mass suffering, and that any amount is enough as far as we're concerned.
But
exactly, there is no evidence, or if there is, it is very limited, and I personally would say that I, for one, do not trust climate activists that masquerade as scientists. We have already seen that they will deliberately skew or present the so-called evidence in such a way that it misleads the general public.
How would they die?
Mass migration around the world is already taking place due to prolonged drought in countries, particularly in South Asia. There are wildfires in Indonesia, the Amazon rainforest, also Siberia, the Arctic.
Well, firstly, there have always been mass migration. There has always been droughts. There have always been weather-related disasters. That is climate in itself. That if there is weather, there will be weather-based or weather-factored catastrophes. That is going to happen. It does not mean that we are entering a prolonged period of global warming or global cooling or climate change. They change the goalposts, and they change the wording and the context of everything they say to fit the very limited amount of scientific data that they actually have. You've got to remember that weather operates and weather systems operate over deep time, not human lifetimes. We haven't been collecting data for nearly long enough to know exactly what is going to happen and if it does happen, when it's going to happen, and the scale that it's going to happen. During this interview or debate, I should say, the Maldives were brought up and the possibility of the Maldives going under the water. I've spoken about this on a previous video. I was scared into believing they were going to sink by the year 2000 when I was young. And I see now as an adult, young people worrying about the same thing, that the Maldives is going to fall beneath the waves and everyone will die. They've been saying that for decades.
They don't mean that our young people will all be dead in 20 years.
No, perhaps not in 20 years, but I can't speak to what Roger was,
He's one of your founders.
With that. He's one of the members of Extinction Rebellion, yes.
An admission of misinformation that comes from the upper echelons of Extinction Rebellion.
It's 20,000 a year. Still 20,000 too many, but it's a reduction of 95,000. It doesn't lead to the 95%. The reduction of 95%, it does not lead to a death of billions. I mean, aren't you scaring people with this rhetoric, aren't you?
I think there's a danger of scaring people simply because we're not taking it seriously enough, and people are feeling really, desperate that we're heard on this. And unfortunately, alarmist language works, which is why we're discussing it right now.
And there it is, the admission that they use alarmist language in order to frighten people because apparently it works, which I'm afraid to say it does. People generally react to fear. Now, these are the type of people, these left-wingers that like to say us on the right, we are the people of fear, not the people of hope. We operate on fear. Now, that is the complete and utter opposite of reality. These people have always been about fear, discrimination and bigotry. The people on the left are the people of fear. They're always the ones who tell you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't say this, you can't say that, you've got to pay taxes for this, for that and the other, you're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that, you should think this, you just think that, you can't say this, you should say that. If this wasn't enough for you, over the recent Extinction Rebellion demonstrations that have been from London to Berlin to all over the place, even Australia, one such organisation. And if that wasn't enough for you, one such demonstration by Extinction Rebellion that have happened very recently, only over the last week or so, they were caught in the act of trying to hide their diesel generator, which you can see here. Now, this is the utter hypocrisy of these people. Did they honestly think that wooden pallets would actually hide the noise of a diesel generator? These people are just showing how out of touch they are, not only with technology, but with working class people in general. These middle class hippies have probably never handled wooden pallets before. In fact, I would go as far and say definitely. This is a pathetic attempt to hide themselves and what they are doing. They were also videoed and filmed eating in McDonald's and other capitalist places that they claim to hate. And finally, we have the bizarre incident where a Paralympian who has aligned himself with Extinction Rebellion decided to climb to the top of an aeroplane and glue himself to it. Now, in the video, the woman who is filming him, who obviously prearranged to film it with him, says that he is blind. He's a blind Paralympian. He might be, I don't know. But how on earth did a blind man who is a Paralympian manage to climb to the top of a jet airplane by himself and then glue himself to it? He says, or she says on his behalf, that he is disgusted at the world that he now lives in and that something needs to change and that he's scared for his children. Now, if he is blind, as she states, isn't that just the type of person that she is looking for? And people like that are looking for people who are literally, physically and mentally blind to what is this fraud that is being put on them, and not only that, if he is a Paralympian, regardless of that, thank you for representing the country, I appreciate that. However, the scales of justice exist for a reason. It means that no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, no matter where you are, your position, your status in life, The rules apply to you as the same it does to a homeless guy on the street. You cannot cherry pick what you do, who you are, and expect to get away with it. The rules apply to all, or should apply to all, evenly. He should be punished as far as the long arm of the law can extend. So we'll watch this video and then I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. If you haven't yet, by all means, please subscribe, hit the notification bell and like the video, maybe leave a comment. Okay, I'll leave you with this video of this man gluing himself. He thinks he's going to help the country. He thinks he's going to help the world by gluing himself to an aeroplane.
James Brown, a Paralympian in the Olympic Games in London in 2012, who's doing this for his children. So if you can't quite see what's happening, this is a flight bound for Amsterdam at London City Airport, and a very fit but blind Paralympian, James Brown, has just climbed on top of the plane, shouting out to the world that we need to curb our flights, we need to change our ways. I did a pre-interview with him where he explained to me how devastated he feels that his children are growing up in this a very different world.
Thank you.